foreign supply vessels that have letters of non-applicability that are operating on the OCS, and those are the vessels that are taking work away from U.S.-built, U.S.-crewed, and U.S.-owned vessels.
You said earlier that in your testimony that this dates back to 1976 and a series of letters that have come forward from the CBP, Customs and Border Patrol. Could you, and in your testimony you also discussed efforts that have been made to rectify the inaccuracy in those letters. Could you go into that just a little bit more detail here and lay out for this committee, and specifically what we might be able to do to rectify the situation?
Certainly, sir. So, yes, starting in 1976 was the first letter ruling that we look at dealing with merchandise on the OCS. And that letter dealt with a pipeline barge that was transporting merchandise. From that, it was declared that the lane of that pipeline was not a Jones Act activity. And that's not a point we're challenging right now. I do want to make that clear. But the other activities, the ancillary activities, we're looking at. Now, the CBP revocation effort also kept that pipeline ability in there, but also said you can't transport pipeline connectors, tools, or other materials and leave them on the OCS. Additional letter rulings have been issued for items such as de minimis activities. Basically, as long as you're not breaking the law too much, you can do what you're doing. Or unforeseen repairs was an interesting letter ruling. Someone submitted a letter ruling request for preventative maintenance, and CBP responded and said, no, preventative maintenance is an intrinsically foreseeable activity. Well, the next letter ruling that came in said, well, we have an intrinsically unforeseeable activity. Is that allowed? CBP said yes. We also had some for other similar activities. Hey, we're doing a permitted activity, and while we're doing that permitted activity, we would also like to do an unpermitted activity. Would you allow that? That was also agreed to. So that was kind of the letter rulings that built upon themselves.
I understand that you filed a lawsuit to try to clear up this situation. Is that correct?
Yes, we have, sir.
And that suit is proceeding?
Yes, it is.
What can we do by law, or, well, basically by law, to make clear that there is a differentiation between reasonable activities and unreasonable activities? Is there a lack of clarification in the current law? Does it need to be clarified?
As I said in my testimony, sir, I think OXLA and the Jones Act are very clear. If you're transporting merchandise from point A to point B, that has to be on a U.S.-built, U.S.-crewed vessel.
So it is really about the enforcement of the law?
Yes, it is, sir. And I understand that the committee is going to be having a hearing later this month on that, and I applaud that effort. Thank you all.
Okay, very good. I want to go into another question area, and I'm out of time, so I'll wait till we come back around.
Mr. Weber is recognized.
Gosh, John, you shocked me there. I thought you had 3 or 4 minutes left, didn't you?
Thank you for yielding, and I'll carry on.
Next time. We appreciate you guys being here. I wanted to go back to something the chairman said, and Mr. Chairman, you've been at this a lot longer than I have. You know, you're asking why was that happening, for example, the CBP, and y'all talked about some different ideas. Well, I would submit this, that sometimes in the name of free trade, some of our bureaucrats think we need to be fair. We ought to be fairness. There's a world market out there, and somehow we've got to, be world market oriented and fair about it. But there's nothing fair when you're dealing with a lot of other countries who subsidize and do all the things that we know that they do. So, Duncan, maybe that's the answer to the question. Somehow they have gotten this idea that we need to be fair. We need to be the leader in fairness. Well, I submit that we want our economy to be the best. We need to be fairly in the lead. We want our national security to be best. We need to be fairly in that lead, and that's the fairness we ought to be concerned about. Let me jump over to LNG. I know that many of you may not know that I represent the Gulf Coast of Texas, first 3 counties in Louisiana. The Sabine H.S.